and welcome to Kent County Close-Up. I'm Deb Havens, Democratic candidate for Kent County Commission in Plainfield Township and the City of Rockford. I'm extremely proud of Democratic candidates running with me, and this show is about restoring Michigan, our quality education, environment, and high-paying jobs. My guest today is Craig Beach, the Democratic candidate seeking to unseat current Senator Pete MacGregor in the 28th District, which is huge. It's comprised of 5 cities and 14 townships in Kent County, where over 300,000 residents live. Craig recently retired after 32 years of teaching, 30 of those years in the Rockford school system and the area where he currently lives. So welcome, Craig.
Thank you, Deb.
Go Rams.
Yes, yeah.
So one of your key policy platforms gives very strong emphasis to the value of public education. I can well understand that.
Yes.
This is based on your own success story?
Yes, I hope it's based on my experience in education. As a retired teacher, I think it's important to bring that expertise to Lansing, to be an advocate for public education at the state level. And I believe that's been lacking to this point. I think we all have to agree that there are issues with public education. We know our reading scores are stagnant and in many cases dropping. And we are spending more money, but I think it's relative. When we look at our spending compared to other states, we're still behind. So I want to bring a different voice, an offsetting voice, if you will, to the issue of education and how education can be the foundation of a vibrant, prosperous economy.
Yeah, and that would seem to make obvious, perfect sense to everyone, but it's interpreted quite differently. Your opponent, Pete MacGregor, seems to share a kind of mutual admiration society with the DeVos family, Betsy DeVos. He supported her push for virtually unregulated and for-profit charter schools. And the DeVos family gave him some $14,000 between 2014 and 15 for his campaign contribution. So, really, some have said there's a relationship between charter schools and the fact that Michigan is now at the 36th level in comparison with the other 50 states for student achievement. So given all of that, those trends and where we're at right now, how can your educational plan really, fix that situation and truly serve kids?
Well, I think the first issue, and you highlighted it, charter schools are here to stay. As much as Democrats like to bash charter schools, they're here. The public supports charter schools. But what we need to do is we need to hold charter schools accountable. I think the term you used was unregulated. Mm-hmm. If you look across the United States, the state of Michigan has the wild, wild west mentality of charter schools.
That's a great phrase.
We are, if not the least regulated, one of the least regulated charter school environments in the United States. So the first issue I have is charter schools are here to stay, but we need to develop government oversight. The average student in the city of Detroit, by the time they get to 8th grade, goes to 4 different schools. That's a problem. And of those 4 different schools, obviously many of those are charters. That creates instability. That creates a situation where there's no foundation of that community, that local school, that there's ownership. So other than that charter school issue, I think we need to increase our spending in education, which I know many people are going to say, well, there's another Democrat, tax and spend, tax and spend. And I guess my point is, what's the alternative? The alternative is, in the state of Michigan, the average per pupil funding is about $1,200 lower than the national average. Republicans like to talk about how they've increased educational spending in the last 2 years. We're still behind. Again, it's a relative issue. I believe in universal pre-K education so that those young children, when they get to kindergarten, they have a stable base that gives them a leg up so that our third grade test scores aren't lagging. Because that's one of the things we hear about so much in the news is our third grade test scores and that they're decreasing. And I think that the data shows there are concrete things we can do to mitigate, to turn that around. And they aren't cheap. And that's the part that I hope the public can own. There's no silver bullet. If we want to increase our reading scores, it's going to take some social investment. It's going to take creating some social investment that creates stable neighborhoods, that creates stable, strong community mental health spending, that, as I said before, creates universal pre-K spending. And in doing that, we can give our young people a strong foundation as they start their journey in the school system. And I truly believe that we owe it to every child in the state of Michigan to give to them the tools so that they can develop their talent to their fullest ability. And unfortunately, I don't think that's the case right now. I think.
Hang on a second. Let's make it a bigger picture, because you talk about building a better Michigan, and that all involves growing our economy and restoring the middle class. I think when you talk about things like enhancing neighborhood schools and giving some stability to kids and families, that's all part of a larger plan that you see?
Oh, I definitely think that education is the foundation for the future of Michigan. We cannot have a strong, sustainable, prosperous middle class without a strong educational foundation. Education will create the tools that will develop the talent of our population. And I truly believe, and I think again the data bears me out, that talent will draw business more than low taxes. And that's one of the things that I've tried to be very consistent as I've campaigned, is that, yep, to be a business-friendly, low business tax state is a nice campaign slogan, but the data doesn't show us that creates a sustainable, prosperous middle class. Michigan's unemployment rate is low. There's no question. However, according to Michigan Association of United Ways, approximately 50% of the jobs in our state don't provide families enough wages and benefits to meet their basic needs, plan for retirement, or plan for their kids' post-secondary education.
So that sounds like you're in favor of increasing minimum wage?
I am in favor of increasing minimum wage, and also I support a prevailing wage scenario, most definitely.
Where are you falling on that? Around $15 an hour, or
I would like I like that figure, but I would like to give local communities some flexibility, because somebody making $15 an hour in Rockford may be in a different economic situation than somebody making $15 an hour in Newberry, Michigan.
Right.
I don't believe a one size fits all, but I definitely believe in a community wage, a prevailing wage for that community. Yes.
Let's move on to a different topic here. Senator MacGregor was endorsed by Michigan Right to Life and Citizens for Traditional Values, And both of these organizations have fought very hard to prevent women from accessing reproductive health services and abortion through, well, pick Planned Parenthood as an example. Why do you use the term pro-birth rather than pro-life when describing your Republican opponent's opposition to abortion service?
Yeah, this is one of the things that I get very emotional about. The majority of pro-life people that I have met, and I have no data, this is truly anecdotal, are not pro-life, they're pro-birth. And I have so much, let me back up. I was at a parade a few years ago, and there was a protester with a sign of an aborted fetus walking around, you know, abortion is evil, go to hell, that kind of stuff. And so I went up to the individual and I said, so, of course, you're a foster parent, right? And they're like, well, I don't understand, abortion's bad. And I'm like, I'm not disagreeing on what your view on abortion is, but once that child born, what is your collective responsibility? Oh, I believe every child is a gift from God. I don't have a problem with that. But once that child is born, what do pro-life people believe? I believe once that child is born, we have a responsibility. I'm a person of faith. I think God has put into me this idea that I have a responsibility to help the broken, to help those suffering from poverty, from opioid addiction, from broken homes, from broken neighborhoods. Those are the individuals where we need social investment. To me, pro-life is inclusive, it's comprehensive. I don't tend to favor capital punishment. To me, that's also a pro-life issue. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just disingenuous when so many pro-life people say, well, I'm pro-life, I go to church. And I go to church, and I believe I'm more pro-life than you are, and they get very upset, and I understand that.
It's a tough debate.
But I want to expand beyond just, okay, let's have this child born. Once the child is born, my faith lays upon me that I have a responsibility to help the hurting, to help the disadvantaged, to provide a leg up, to provide some stability. And I don't see that discussion in the small government, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, market approach to a prosperous country.
Well, I
think that's missing.
Yeah, I hear you, and I think that you would obviously want to change that.
Yeah, yes.
Well, let me ask you about the environment, because this is another issue that I think Democrats are typically known for their concerns. You grew up in Grand Haven. You enjoyed a lot of outdoor activities.
Yes.
And, you know, when I've been researching your opponent for this interview, Senator MacGregor seems to feel the environment might be a little overprotected because he's voted for something called environmental oversight committees. And the members of these committees include manufacturing, the oil and gas industry, waste management, among others. But the whole point seems to be to give big business a way to directly access the permitting process here in the state of Michigan. And I just wonder, you know, does Senator MacGregor have a point? Are environmentalists really better off working directly with members of industry in this context, or do you see a problem there?
Well, I think they're better off working in that regards if our number one priority is the bottom line. But when I decided to run, I think early on one of my most foundational statements was, I put people above profits. And we have an MDEQ, Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, that is headed by a former BP oil executive. And the phrase that is often bantered about is the fox is watching the hen house.
Yes.
And when that occurs, the hens suffer. Our districts that Deb's running for Kent County Commission and the 28 State Senate District, the gutting of the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, I think, has put our citizens' health at risk. We see that at Flint. We see that with the PFAS crisis. So if our number one priority is to enhance the bottom line of businesses, then Peter MacGregor's your man. But again, I think we need to look beyond that. We are not protecting the health of our citizens. Our citizens are suffering, and our resources are being exploited. The Nestle well situation with them, what was it? And my numbers could be wrong. 78,000 people opposed that permit. 19 favored it, and it was rubber stamped.
Yes.
That's problematic.
Yes.
That's problematic.
Yeah, it does make the mind boggle. It's just a great segue, though, Craig, into the fact that you mentioned the PFAS issue that we're both very concerned about in our district.
Yeah.
Now, Mr. MacGregor has demanded that the EPA set a limit on the safe, if there is such a thing, safe limit of PFAS in drinking water. It's found here, it's just about every place else in Michigan, and certainly it's spreading throughout, we're finding, the US, the rest of the world. But waiting for the EPA, now I mean that may never happen given the Trump administration. Right. Other states have set their limits without waiting for the EPA to make a call on this. How do you think the state should respond?
I definitely believe the state should pick up Winnie Brinks's proposed bill, which set the PFAS parts per trillion at 5 parts per trillion. Now, I think we both realize that that bill will never see the light of day. It's buried by Republican committee members. The federal report on PFAS was hidden by the Trump administration. It's well recorded that their comment was this could create a public crisis.
Yeah,
yes,
a nightmare.
A public affairs nightmare. That's our health.
Yeah,
that's our health. We need government that's going to put citizens first. I don't know, and I don't know if anyone knows what the parts per trillion number should be.
Some have said 0.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that takes us in terms of how
we get there.
How we get there.
I just know that the overwhelming evidence is at 70 parts per trillion, it's not safe for citizens. We need to lower that. Again, I definitely support Winnie Brinks, her proposal at the state level at 5 parts per trillion. I think that that is the most restrictive, as I understand it, in the United States, and I don't have a problem with that. That's the people, my neighbors, their children, and their grandchildren. I don't have a problem saying that's the most restrictive. I have a problem going the other way, saying, well, let's just take it slow, and let's let science figure out what's going to happen. I just think there are so many instances where people's health suffers. We went through that with cigarettes and PCBs and so many things. We need to advocate for ourselves because unfortunately many times these become political issues.
I couldn't agree with you more, Craig, and as a fellow Democrat and candidate, I plan to support all your efforts, and I wish you the best of luck in November. And thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Deb, and I appreciate it. I think it's very important for people to get information. I appreciate people watching and making an informed decision. That's the only way our democracy survives, is people check out Pete MacGregor, they check out Craig Beach, they check out Deb Chamberlain. Thank you.
Thank you. And if you'd like to contact me with questions or comments, you can send an email to debhavens@kentcounty@gmail.com. And that's it for Kent County Close-Up. I'm Deb Havens. Thanks for joining me and the production team here at GRTV in Grand Rapids, Michigan.